In Part 4A of the 1947 India-Pakistan War, we saw how the Indian Defence Forces were able to secure Naushera by pushing the enemy out of the town and all the important features surrounding it. The Indian Armed Forces had suffered a major loss earlier when they had to retreat from the town of Changard under overwhelming enemy attack. With the enemy's foiled attempt at Naushera, they knew that now the Indian side would try to recapture Changard. So they strengthened their defenses in Jhangar to foil such an attempt from the Indian side. The Indian side started planning the operations to retake Changard, codename Operation Vijay. With the enemy's strengthened defenses in the region, the Indian side could not afford to leave Naushera vulnerable while they attempted to capture Changard. There was still a threat at Naushera from the north that had to be offset. So the Indian Armed Forces took the next few weeks increasing their forces' strength in Naushera by adding the 19th Infantry Brigade in the town to support the already present 50 Parachute Brigade. By March of 1948, Naushera had both 19 Infantry Brigade and the 50 Parachute Brigade ready to launch Operation Vijay. The basic plan was to have the two brigades advance in parallel axes along the Naushera-Jhangar highway, with the 19th Brigade on the right of the road and the 50 Para Brigade on the left, and upon reaching the outskirts of Jhangar, attack the enemy's positions from these axes. March 14, 1948. Operation Vijay was initiated, with both the brigades moving forward along their axis lines. Both brigades on the left and the right along the main highway faced fierce resistance. They captured one feature point after the other along the two lines and reached the outer periphery of Changard on March 17, 1948. Now it was time for the attack to go into the town of Changard. The two brigades positioned themselves along their axis lines. Forces from both the sides met in the middle, creating the center thrust and the remaining forces protecting the outer flanks. The following day, the attack went in. The enemy was prepared to go on the offensive and attacked the Indian center thrust with high intensity. Their plan was to break the spear of the thrust of the Indian formations and swiftly defeat the Indian attack. They put significant forces in the center thrust of the Indian attack, but chose to ignore the force formations along the Indian flanks. Seeing this opportunity, the Indian side quickly made a pincer move to attempt and surround the enemy. A pincer move is when an opposing force advances towards center of the troops, trying to break the enemy formations. The opposing side in response does a tactical retreat of its center forces and moves its flanks forward. With the enemy swiftly moving forward from the center, gets surrounded from three sides: the center, its left flank, and its right flank. Being surrounded from three sides, the enemy now has the option of either fighting the battle along three fronts and risking complete decimation of its force, or retreating from their positions while suffering considerable losses during the retreat. The 19 and 50 brigades made the pincer move by moving on the right and the left flank of the enemy, surrounding them from three sides. After being surrounded, the enemy retreated from its positions and suffered considerable losses. Owing to the considerable losses, they continued to retreat from the town back towards Mirpur and Kotli. With this, Jhangar was retaken by the Indian Armed Forces. Operation Vijay was successful. After the previous loss of Jhangar, the retaking of the town was a major psychological victory for the Indian side. With Jhangar in Indian control, the enemy's easy access to the towns of Mirpur and Kotli was also cut off. So this victory put the Indian side in a strategically advantageous position in that region. The Indian forces strengthened their defenses of the town because it was almost certain that the enemy will make an attempt on the town in the coming months. The next objective for the Indian side was to go up the communication line towards Poonch. The next step for that was the crucial town north of Naushera, Rajouri. Rajouri is only 48 kilometers north of Nowshera, but halfway to Rajouri, the road linking the two towns passes through a thick forest. This is Chingas. Chingas was an enemy stronghold, the base from where they had launched most of their operations into Nowshera. For any chance of capturing Rajouri, the Indian side had to first neutralize the threat coming from the enemy's stronghold at Chingas. The opening move in capturing Rajouri was made on April 8, 1948, by 4 Dogra from the 19th Brigade. Their flanks were secured by 2 Jat on the left of the thrust and 2 Rajputana rifles on the right. The advance was conducted on a broader front with the infantry moving on the hills on either side of the main road, while the armor moving along the road. The Indian side expected fierce fighting for the enemy base at Chingas, so they employed tanks to be rolled into the area to dominate the battle. The enemy anticipated the deployment of tanks and other heavy machinery from the Indian side and put in place their countermeasures by placing anti-tank mines on the tracks. It was crucial for the Indian side to remove all anti-tank mines from the tracks before the tanks could safely move forward. The task of clearing out the anti-tank mines was taken up by the engineers of 37 Assault Field Company. This was a highly risky assignment because the enemy knew that the Indian side would have to send their troops to try and clear out the mines, and they were prepared to stop such an attempt with heavy firepower. The engineers of 37 Assault Field Company went ahead with their assignment under heavy mortar and machine gun fire from the enemy. Second Lieutenant Rama Raghobar Rane was on this mission when he was hit by a mortar fire. Despite being badly wounded after the hit, he continued with his mission and cleared out multiple obstacles from the tracks. Because of the courage displayed by the engineers of 37 Assault Field Company, the Indian tanks were successfully able to move ahead on these tracks and attack the enemy base. For the courage displayed by Lieutenant Rane in this mission, he was awarded the Paramveer Chakra, India's highest military honor. With the presence of tanks and other heavy machinery, the Indian side dominated the battle at Chingas, and the enemy had to retreat from their positions further into the forest. The Nowshera-Rajouri highway was now clear of any attacks from the enemy. The enemy's ability to launch major attacks into Nowshera as well as defending Rajouri was offset by this victory of the Indian armed forces. With no major reinforcements available to the enemy at Rajouri, their defense of the town completely fell apart, and the Indian armed forces entered Rajouri on April 12, 1948.